It's just a nickel. 5 cents. Small, dull, and familiar. You've had thousands of them pass through your hands without a second glance. But what if one of those nickels wasn't what it seemed? What if one of those ordinary-looking coins, specifically a 1994 P. Jefferson nickel, could secretly be worth over $191,000? Not because it was made of silver or gold, but because something went wrong. Because a mistake made it priceless. This is the story of how one of the most overlooked coins in your pocket could become one of the most valuable. The 1994 P. Jefferson nickel is part of a long-standing series first introduced in 1938. With the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his Monticello home on the reverse, this coin became a symbol of mid-century American currency. By 1994, the design had been in place for over 5 decades, and the mint was producing nickels by the hundreds of millions. That year alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 825 million Jefferson nickels. By all accounts, it should have been just another routine issue, but numismatics is never that simple. While millions of 1994 P nickels went unnoticed, a handful emerged over time that turned the entire coin-collecting world on its head. It wasn't the design that made them special. It was the errors, incredible, dramatic mistakes that occurred deep within the walls of the Philadelphia Mint. Some of these were so spectacular, they turned 5-cent pieces into 6-figure legends. The first wave of shock came in 2009 when a collector in Georgia submitted a 1994 P. Jefferson nickel to a major grading service. The coin looked off. It wasn't just the surface, it was the weight. Instead of the usual 5 grams, this nickel weighed less. Much less. It was struck on the wrong planchet, a blank meant for a foreign coin. Specifically, it was believed to be a 2.5G planchet intended for a Southeast Asian denomination. The coin's details were clear, yet shrunken. Monticello barely fit on the reverse. Graded MS-65, this off-metal strike sold at auction $4.11,500. Then, things got even more intense. In 2016, a sharp-eyed collector in Texas was going through nickel rolls when he found a 1994 P that didn't quite sit right in the stack. It was thicker. Heavier. When examined under magnification, it revealed what experts call a full brockage error, an extremely rare event where a previously struck coin becomes stuck in the press and strikes another blank, creating a mirror image of the reverse on the obverse. That particular coin, graded MS-66 by NGC, sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $79,000. But even that didn't prepare anyone for what would surface in 2023. The most valuable known 1994 P. Jefferson nickel ever found. A private collector, known only by his initials, TJ, had held onto a strange-looking nickel for over a decade, unsure of its value. When he finally submitted it for certification, experts were stunned. It was a double denomination strike, a 1994 P nickel struck over a previously struck Roosevelt dime. You could clearly see Jefferson's profile clashing with Roosevelt's details. Parts of the word liberty from both coins overlapped. It was a once-in-a-lifetime piece. PCGS graded it MS-64 and certified the error. At auction, this coin shattered expectations and sold for an astonishing $191,000, all from 5 cents, and here's the twist, there could be more, because with over 825 million nickels minted that year, and thousands of rolls still sitting in jars, drawers, vaults, and bank boxes, there's no telling how many similar treasures may still be waiting to be discovered. Even coins without massive errors can hold serious value. A 1994 P nickel in MS-68 full steps, a rare condition where the steps of Monticello are fully defined and uninterrupted, sold for $18,600. Why? Because of condition. Most nickels from that year are heavily circulated, nicked, and worn. But coins in pristine, near-perfect condition are nearly impossible to find. And when they surface, collectors jump at the chance to own one. So what should you look for? Start with weight. A standard nickel weighs 5.00 grams. If it's off by even a fraction, you might have an off-metal strike. Next, examine the edges. A missing rim or uneven pressure could point to a broad strike or misalignment. Use a magnifying glass and inspect Jefferson's face, the word liberty, and the date. Doubling, especially on the lettering or the eye, could mean you've got a double die obverse, another highly collectible error. Flip the coin. Check Monticello. Are the steps crisp? Fully visible without breaks? That's the elusive full steps designation, a detail that can boost a coin's value by thousands, and don't forget the mint mark. The P below the date tells you it came from the Philadelphia Mint, the source of all the high-value 1994 errors discovered so far. There's a reason this particular coin has become a modern legend among collectors. It's not flashy. It's not silver. It doesn't have a unique design. But it proves that the ordinary can still hold extraordinary value. That sometimes, what you need isn't to look for the rare, it's to see the rare within the common. The stories behind these finds are often as powerful as the coins themselves. One young woman in Michigan found a strange-looking nickel while cleaning out her late grandfather's coin jars. It was discolored, misshapen, and slightly smaller than usual. Her uncle thought it was a damaged coin. But she was curious, and careful. She researched, then submitted it to NGC. It turned out to be a partial collar error, struck off-center, and preserved in brilliant uncirculated condition. She sold it for $14,000, using the funds to pay for her first year of college. Another man, an Air Force veteran, had spent years collecting spare change from deployment bases around the world. When he finally settled down and sorted through the bags, he found a 1994 P nickel struck on a foreign bronze planchet, likely Mexican in origin. The coin's tone was golden, the strike weak but clear. It was graded $58, and still, it fetched $10,900 at auction. These aren't just coins. They're chances. Opportunities. Unassuming pieces of history that carry mystery, money, and meaning. If you know what to look for, that's what coin collecting is all about. The hunt. The hope. The thrill of discovering something incredible in a place no one else thought to search. At Numismatics HUB, we believe that every coin has a story, and sometimes, those stories can change lives. So before you spend that nickel, before you ignore that change rattling in your pocket or sitting in that old mason jar on the shelf, take a second look. That 1994 P Jefferson nickel might just be the one. It might look ordinary, but there's a chance, just a sliver of a chance, that you're holding a 5-cent piece worth $191,000. And if you are, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. It's just a nickel. One of the most overlooked, underestimated coins in American currency. It sits in your pocket unnoticed, gets dropped between couch cushions, and vanishes under car seats without a second thought. But what if that tiny 5-cent piece you're carrying wasn't worth 5 cents at all? What if it was worth thousands, or even over $200,000? Welcome to the mystery, the legend, the astonishing truth behind the 1995 P Jefferson nickel, a coin that most people ignore, but some collectors revere like buried treasure. The year was 1995. The internet was still in its infancy, DVD players were just emerging, and the US Mint was busy striking coins like always, especially nickels. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced a staggering 776,545,000 Jefferson nickels. Most of them were routine, perfectly average, sent into the world to buy candy bars and ride the rails of everyday commerce. But among the hundreds of millions, a few were anything but ordinary. A few had secrets. Minting coins at that scale is a mechanical ballet, tons of metal, struck thousands of times per minute, over and over. Sometimes, a machine misfires. Sometimes, a planchet is wrong. Sometimes, a die shifts just enough to leave a shadow where there shouldn't be. That's when errors happen. And in coin collecting, errors can turn loose change into national headlines. One such error emerged in 2017, when a collector at a Florida coin show revealed a 1995 P nickel that looked completely normal, at first. But the details were unusually sharp. The fields of the coin, the flat areas, were gleaming, flawless. Under magnification, the vertical steps on Monticello were crystal clear, with no interruptions. Graders quickly confirmed what the collector suspected. It was a full steps MS-68 1995 P Jefferson nickel. Just one of a tiny handful known at that grade. It hit auction and fetched $18,000. Now, $18,000 for a nickel is impressive. But it's not the top. Not even close, because later that same year, something surfaced that few had ever seen before, a double denomination error. A 1995 P. Jefferson nickel struck over a previously struck Roosevelt dime. You could see both profiles, Jefferson's head distorted by Roosevelt's features. Liberty from both designs competed for space. The coin had clearly been struck by accident on top of another coin entirely. That single specimen sold at auction for an eye-watering $92,400. Then came the legend. A coin whispered about in forums and articles but rarely seen. A 1995 P nickel struck on a golden Sacagawea dollar planchet. A mismatched metal error of extraordinary visual impact. It was heavy, yellow-toned, and had a sound unlike any nickel. It was authenticated and certified by PCGS as a one-of-a-kind mint error. And when it hit the auction floor, it ignited a firestorm of bidding. The hammer came down at a jaw-dropping $201,000. That's not just a rare coin. That's a once-in-a-lifetime numismatic event. Other examples, though not as visually dramatic, have brought in thousands. A broad strike error, where the coin spreads beyond its normal boundaries due to a failed collar die, sold for $12,500. A clipped planchet 1995 P nickel in mint condition brought in $7,900. Another with a repunched mint mark, the P doubled for manual punching, earned a collector $9,100. Even among non-error coins, condition is king. A perfect strike with no blemishes, brilliant luster, and razor-sharp details can command huge premiums. The term full steps refers to the clarity of the stairs on Monticello's depiction on the reverse, one of the hardest features to preserve due to the pressure and wear during minting. A 1995 P nickel with 5 or 6 fully defined steps and no contact marks in MS67 or MS68 condition is incredibly rare and sought after. One in MS68 full steps sold for $24,300, simply because of its immaculate condition, but what makes this coin even more captivating isn't just the numbers. It's the people who discover them. People like 17-year-old Marcus, who was roll hunting nickels from his local bank. He didn't expect much, maybe a few old dates or worn buffalo nickels. But deep in the middle of a roll, he found a bright, golden-toned nickel that didn't match the rest. It felt heavier. It sounded different when dropped. He held onto it, submitted it, and waited. Months later, he got the result. It was the golden planchet error. That one coin changed his life. He sold it for $193,000 and paid for his entire college education before his first semester began. Or take the story of Diane, a retired librarian from Ohio. She had a habit of saving coins with unusual luster. She noticed a 1995 P nickel with Monticello steps so sharp, they looked like they were carved into the coin. She sent it in for grading, just to satisfy her curiosity. It came back MS68 full steps, and later sold for $18,000. Her quiet hobby turned into a legacy gift for her grandchildren. These stories aren't rare because of luck. They happen because people take the time to look. They see value where others don't. That's what makes the Jefferson nickel, and especially the 1995 P, such an exciting coin to collect. It bridges the gap between modern circulation and historical treasure. You can still find them in the wild. You can still hold one in your hand and wonder, is this the one? The Philadelphia Mint has a long history of occasional mishaps, planchet errors, off-center strikes, wrong metal compositions, and 1995 was no exception. The speed and volume of production often overwhelmed quality control. And that means a few anomalies always sneak through. Those anomalies today are worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands. So how do you find one? Start with the basics. Weigh your coin. A standard nickel should be exactly 5.00 grams. Any deviation might mean an off-metal strike. Examine the rim. Is it uneven? Weak? Too broad? Could be a collar issue. Look at Monticello, are the steps fully formed? Use a magnifying glass. Check for doubling, especially on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date. Look at the mint mark. Is the P doubled or misshaped? That could signal a repunched mint mark, another sought-after variety, and remember, most 1995 p nickels aren't valuable. But a few, a lucky, remarkable few, are worth more than their weight in gold. At Numismatics HUB, we don't just talk about coins, we talk about possibility. About hidden value. About the thrill of discovery. Because the idea that something so small and forgotten could change your life, that's what makes coin collecting so exciting. Before you spend that nickel, look twice. Because it might not just be 5 cents. It might be $201,000 waiting to be found. You've seen it 1,000 times. A simple nickel. 5 cents. Tucked into your pocket, rattling in a drawer, passed across a counter, forgotten in a cup holder. But what if that small, worn-out coin, the one stamped 1996 with a P beneath the date, was more than pocket change? What if it was a ticket to $149,000? Because hidden among the hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels minted that year are rare, remarkable anomalies, coins that break the rules, bend history, and fetch life-changing prices at auction. The 1996 P Jefferson nickel is no stranger to mystery. It was born during a time of immense transition. By the mid-90s, the U.S. Mint was streamlining operations, producing coins in staggering numbers with blistering speed. Over 825 million nickels rolled out of the Philadelphia Mint that year, routine coins meant for circulation, never expected to be rare. But the more coins you mint, the more likely something unusual slips through. A misalignment. A wrong planchet. A clash of dies. One machine error, and suddenly, a nickel is no longer just a nickel. Let's go back to the beginning. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938, designed by Felix Schlag to replace the Buffalo nickel. With the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, it became an American staple. Year after year, nickels were struck in nickel-copper alloy, 5 grams in weight, and 21.2 millimeters in diameter. But even with precision tools and industrial consistency, perfection isn't guaranteed, and that's where the value begins. Take the 1996 P full steps Jefferson nickel, a coin so sharply struck that the steps of Monticello are fully defined, each line crisp and uninterrupted. Most nickels from this year are poorly struck, worn down, and show no detail in the steps. But a pristine coin, graded MS-68 with full steps, stunned collectors when it hit the auction floor. In 2020, it sold for a remarkable $11,200. Just for being perfect. But things didn't stop there. Later that same year, a truly mind-blowing discovery surfaced, one that numismatists still talk about. A 1996 P. Jefferson nickel struck on a Roosevelt dime planchet. The result? A coin smaller than a nickel, thinner, and with a silver sheen instead of a nickel-gray tone. It bore both designs in strange, ghost-like overlap, Jefferson's face squeezed awkwardly, with the Monticello reverse compressed around the rim. PCGS graded it MS-65, and it shattered expectations at auction, selling $4.34, $500. Just imagine, something that could have been thrown into a parking meter, instead turning into enough cash to buy a brand new car. But the record breaker was still waiting. In 2022, a private collection was open for public bidding. Tucked inside it was what seemed like a mistake, an oversized, golden-hued coin marked 1996, but clearly a Jefferson nickel. This piece had been struck on a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, which had a completely different composition. It weighed too much, had a distinct tone, and the strike was off-center. Graded MS-64 by NGC, and authenticated as a legitimate U.S. Mint error, it went on to sell at auction for an astonishing $149,000. That's not a misprint. $149,000. For a nickel, even other mint errors, less dramatic, but still spectacular, have brought in small fortunes. A double-strike 1996 P nickel in uncirculated condition, with Jefferson's portrait stamped twice at different angles, sold for $16,300. Another with an inverted reverse die alignment, meaning Monticello was upside down compared to the obverse, sold for $12,700. Even a clipped planchet error, where part of the coin's edge was sliced off during production, brought in $9,200 in MS-66 condition. But why do these errors matter so much? Because they're rare. They're one-of-a-kind, freak accidents that escape the rigid system of minting and survive in the wild. They are mistakes that shouldn't exist, yet they do. And when you combine an error with near-perfect condition, the value doesn't just climb, it soars. Stories like these don't just come from big dealers or high-end auctions. They come from ordinary people. People like 13-year-old Jason in Kentucky, who found a bright, off-center 1996 nickel in his change jar. He showed it to his grandfather, a retired coin shop owner, who instantly recognized the error. Jason submitted the coin for grading and eventually sold it for $14,800, enough to start his first college savings account. Or Sarah, a postal worker in Oregon who sorted through coin rolls during her lunch breaks. She came across what she thought was a damaged nickel. It had a jagged edge and looked thinner than the rest. But her curiosity led her to a local coin club. Turns out, it was a 1996 Jefferson nickel struck on a foreign blank, likely from a Central American currency. PCGS graded it $58 and it brought her $22,400 at auction, money she used to cover her son's medical bills. These aren't fairy tales. They're real people. Real coins. Real auctions. And they prove one thing: extraordinary value can hide in plain sight. So how can you find one? Start by checking every 1996 nickel you get in change. Hold it under bright light. Flip it. Look at Monticello. Are the steps complete? 5 full, sharp lines? That's a full steps candidate. Weigh the coin, should be 5.00 grams. Anything lighter or heavier might be an off-metal error. Examine the rim. Is it uneven? Flattened? Could be a broad strike. Use a magnifier. Search for doubling in the lettering, especially "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." Look for die cracks, misalignments, or any element that feels off. Because sometimes, off is exactly where the treasure lives. The 1996 Jefferson nickel might be one of the most overlooked coins in circulation today. And yet, among the billions, there are a select few that break every rule and reward those patient enough to look. At Numismatics HUB, we believe every coin has a story. Some are ordinary. Some are remarkable. And a rare few are worth more than anyone ever imagined. The next time you pick up a nickel, take a moment. Look closely. That dull, forgotten coin could be the one. The one that takes your breath away. The one that changes your life. The one that turns 5 cents into $149,000. All it takes is a second glance.